For thou art not a God that hath pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell with thee. Psalms chapter 5 verse 4. In this verse, David reflects on the nature of God, emphasizing his absolute holiness and righteousness. He declares that God does not take pleasure in wickedness and that evil has no place in his presence. This statement serves to remind us of God's perfect justice and his intolerance of sin. It reflects a deep understanding of the character of God, revealing both his holiness and the inherent separation between good and evil. Through this verse, David invites us to reflect on the purity of God's nature and his expectation for his followers to live in accordance with his standards of righteousness. For thou art not a God that hath pleasure in wickedness. David begins by acknowledging a fundamental truth about God: he does not delight in wickedness. This is a powerful declaration that speaks to God's righteous nature. He is a God of justice and goodness, and sin is incompatible with his character. The phrase, pleasure in wickedness, signifies that God does not derive any satisfaction or joy from the actions of the wicked. Instead, he is grieved by sin and longs for righteousness to prevail. In this, David calls us to recognize that God's pleasure is found in truth, holiness, and obedience, not in evil deeds. Neither shall evil dwell with thee. The second part of the verse reinforces the separation between God and evil. David makes it clear that evil cannot coexist with God. Evil here refers to all forms of sin, injustice, and corruption. The idea of evil dwelling with God emphasizes the incompatibility of sin with God's pure nature. Evil cannot take residence in his presence, and there is no place for it in his kingdom. This statement challenges believers to live in a way that is in harmony with God's righteousness, knowing that he will not tolerate sin in his presence. Conclusion. Psalms 5 verse 4 serves as a powerful reminder of God's holiness and his intolerance of sin. It calls us to reflect on the purity of God's nature and the serious consequences of living in opposition to his will. Like David, we are invited to align our lives with God's standards of righteousness, recognizing that sin has no place in his presence. This verse encourages us to examine our hearts, rid ourselves of wickedness, and strive for a life that is pleasing to the God who is pure and just. It is a reminder that God desires holiness, and those who seek to dwell with him must also pursue righteousness, knowing that evil can never stand before him.